White horizon, wind like a knife, nothing but ice for miles. So how did Inuit hunters lie down out there and wake up with all their toes? It wasn't courage, it was a system. First, kill the wind fast using what the Arctic gives you. Then build the room your body can heat by itself. The bed doesn't touch ice. The warmer layer goes where you'd least expect. The heat source. Small, steady, and older than history. And the real lifesaver isn't a blanket at all. It's how you share the heat you already have. One mistake means frostbite. Done right, you make a pocket of summer on a sheet of winter. Tell me the exact time you're watching dawn glow or polar night scroll. If you want more clear, no-nonsense survival history like this, tap like so the story reaches farther. The first thing that hits you isn't the cold, it's the sound. Or rather the absence of it. A silence so deep, it swallows even your thoughts. The Arctic isn't loud. It's an empty cathedral of wind and distance where every breath you take feels borrowed. You stand there on the ice, your eyelashes already stiff with frost, and you wonder how on earth does anyone sleep here without turning into a human popsicle by sunrise. You shift your weight, and the snow under your boots squeals like styrofoam. The horizon looks endless, but that's an illusion. Somewhere far ahead, Inuit hunters are already setting up for the night. They don't see this place as death. They see it as home. And to understand that, you'll have to unlearn everything you think you know about cold. See, the Inuit never relied on bravado or luck. Their survival wasn't about fighting nature, it was about negotiating with it. You feel that negotiation in your bones as the wind slices through your parka and your cheeks sting like you've been slapped by a ghost. Imagine doing this in sealskin, without a zipper, without Gore-Tex, without even the luxury of complaining to a camera. The first lesson the Arctic teaches is humility. The second is stillness. When temperatures drop to 40 degrees, the difference between life and death is movement, or the lack of it. Every unnecessary twitch burns calories. Every gust of breath wastes warmth. You start to realize why Inuit hunters don't panic when storms roll in. They've learned the art of conserving heat as carefully as monks conserve silence. You watch as the day shrinks into a dull violet dusk. There's no sunset here, just a slow fading, like the world dimming its own lantern. Somewhere in the white distance, a team of dogs curls into themselves, tails wrapped over their noses. They'll sleep right there on the ice, their bodies small furnaces powered by fat and instinct. You try to imagine yourself doing the same, but your toes disagree violently with the idea. Still, the Inuit did exactly that. For thousands of years, they've made camp on ice, older than some civilizations, and somehow they've slept through nights that could freeze engine oil solid. No wood, no metal stoves. Just wisdom refined over generations, how to trap air in snow, how to coax heat from oil, how to turn fur into armor. It's funny you remember how people in big cities complain about their air conditioners being too strong. Up here, the entire planet is the air conditioner. The only thing standing between you and oblivion is what you can build with your hands. And what you build has to be quick. When the sun dips behind the horizon, temperatures can drop faster than your phone battery at 20 degrees C. That's why you start noticing the hunters moving like clockwork. One cuts blocks of packed snow with a blade fashioned from bone or metal scrap. Another arranges them in a curve, his hands bare for precision. No hesitation, no small talk. Every movement says, I know what the night will bring. And as the dome begins to rise, you realize it's not just a shelter. It's a story, a monument to adaptation. The snow they carve isn't ordinary snow. It's compacted, wind-sifted, strong enough to hold its shape yet light enough to trap air. Air is the secret ingredient, its insulation, the Arctic's invisible blanket. You run your glove along a block and feel how dry it is, almost squeaky like compressed sugar. When stacked properly, those blocks don't melt. They breathe. They hold heat like a lung. The hunters finish the dome before dark. The entrance faces away from the wind, a small tunnel leading down before rising inside. Its deliberate cold air sinks, warm air rises, so the lowest point is the cold trap. Inside, the sleeping platform will sit higher, because in the Arctic, even warmth has to be engineered. You're tempted to call it an igloo, but the word igloo in Inuktitut simply means house. It could be made of snowstone or even driftwood. The iconic snow igloo is just one version built for travel for hunting expeditions like this one. At home, Inuit families once lived in semi-underground sod houses, insulated with moss and whalebone. But on the hunt, the igloo is king quick to build, quick to abandon. Now the wind picks up again, sharp enough to make your eyes water. You think of how fragile the dome looks against the storm. But that's the beauty. Fragility isn't weakness here. It's design. The snow flexes. The wind glides around it instead of battering through. And soon inside that small glowing mound, warmth begins to collect. If you were to peek inside, you'd see the hunters shedding outer layers, arranging caribou skins in a circle, speaking softly. No shouting, no complaints, just the quiet satisfaction of people who know they've outsmarted the cold one more time. You might even envy that calm. Because while you're still shivering, they're preparing to sleep, lulled by the hiss of the storm like it's a bedtime lullaby. Outside, the Arctic wind keeps roaring, but inside the snow dome you can almost hear the sigh of relief. The sound of a night survived before it's even begun. You crouch beside them now, trying not to look too impressed. But come on, you're watching people build a house out of snow in less time than it takes you to set up an IKEA shelf. There's something deeply humbling about that. The cold nips at your nose as you realize every movement here is muscle memory carved into generations. Inuit hunters didn't just build for shelter, they built for survival theater. Every block is a calculated act against death. You watch the lead hunter, his hands steady despite the temperature slice through the snow with a long blade. The blocks come out smooth, precise, like pieces of marble. Except this marble squeaks. He doesn't stop to measure, he doesn't have to. His eyes know the geometry by heart. 12 blocks form the base ring, each slightly tilted inward, like a frozen spiral waiting to meet itself at the top. There's no blueprint. Just intuition, skill, and centuries of repetition. Your mind, meanwhile, keeps asking modern questions. How do they know it won't collapse? What if the snow is too soft? Shouldn't ice melt from body heat? But that's exactly where the genius lies. The snow isn't a solid, it's a breathable wall of tiny air pockets. The very thing that feels cold to you becomes insulation when shaped right. You remember the first rule of survival here: snow kills, but snow also saves. It depends on whether it's on top of you or around you. The hunter pauses to blow on his fingers, and you can't help noticing his calm. In the Arctic, rushing is dangerous. Panic burns oxygen. Impatience breaks walls. The wind howls over the plain, a sound that would make anyone else sprint for safety, but he just keeps carving. The blocks fit together in a rhythm that feels almost like music. Soft thunks, sliding sounds, small cracks followed by quiet laughter. He tilts the final block into place and trims it perfectly to close the dome. The moment it fits, a strange silence falls. The igloo seals itself. You feel the temperature shift immediately. Inside, the air grows still warm in comparison. Outside, the wind rages on like a jealous god. You crawl through the narrow entrance tunnel. It's a squeeze your parka snags against the wall. But the second you emerge inside, you understand why the Inuit preferred low ceilings and tiny doors. Heat doesn't escape because it has nowhere to go. The interior glows faintly, as if the snow is alive, the light filtering through the white walls like moonlight through frosted glass. You brush off your gloves and look around. The inner structure feels organic, like being inside a seashell. The snow walls are smooth and firm-angled in a gentle curve that channels gravity itself into stability. There's even a ventilation hole at the top to let out moisture and smoke, a perfect balance between airtight and breathable. One of the hunters grins at you, amused by your wide-eyed expression. He gestures toward the walls. Nigu, he says softly. It means home. You repeat it clumsily, and he laughs. It's a kind laugh, the kind that says you're trying, and that's enough. To them, building warmth isn't just about comfort, it's a philosophy. You notice that. They never build against nature, they build with it. The same snow that could bury them is invited to become family. It's not defiance, it's conversation. If you think about it, that's a kind of wisdom we've mostly forgotten. The hunter lights a small lamp made of soapstone. It burns with a steady orange glow fed by oil rendered from seal fat. No smoke, no roar. Just a quiet flame that looks humble but feels divine. He positions it near the sleeping platform, adjusts a flat stone reflector to spread the warmth. Within minutes, the igloo starts to feel like a womb of light. The outside world could be ending, and you wouldn't know. Too hot, you melt the hunter jokes, wiping frost from his eyelashes. He isn't wrong. If the flame burns too long, the inner walls can soften and collapse. So they balance it carefully, a slow dance between heat and structure. You realize it's the same dance every human plays between comfort and risk. Here, that dance just happens to take place on literal ice. You take off your gloves just to test it. The air inside doesn't bite. It's around 0 degrees Celsius, maybe slightly above enough to feel merciful. Outside, it's 35. The difference feels miraculous. You can even smell the faint tang of oil, fur, and snow mixed together, a scent that's oddly soothing. It smells like endurance. Then there's the sound, or rather the lack of it. The walls mute the wind completely. No more shrieking, no more distant cracking of ice floes. Just quiet breathing and the soft hiss of the lamp. You've never heard silence this alive. As you sit there, a realization settles in. This is not primitive architecture. It's advanced design born of desperation and genius. Engineers today still study the igloo's dome for its perfect load distribution and thermal efficiency. It's stronger than it looks, warmer than it should be, and easier to build than logic would allow. You look at the hunters now lying back against their caribou furs, chatting softly. You envy their ease. In your world, you'd probably need a dozen gadgets and a weather app to survive one night out here. They just need snow, a knife, and each other. The oil lamp flickers slightly, casting long shadows along the walls. You watch the curve of light dance and think of how fragile this harmony is, man and ice warmth and death sharing the same space. Somewhere above, the wind howls, but you're safe inside the glow of a snow palace. The air inside the igloo has a pulse now, a soft rhythm of breathing, melting, refreezing. You run your fingers along the wall, half expecting it to crumble, but it's firm, solid, colder than thought. Outside, the storm continues its tantrum. Inside, it feels like time has stopped. It's astonishing how much comfort can come from something so temporary. You can't shake the feeling that this small dome might outlast you. You watch one of the hunters crawl to the far side of the shelter and begin smoothing the sleeping platform with his hands. It's raised maybe a foot higher than the floor. Hot air up, he murmurs, and you understand the same way a bunk bed feels warmer at the top. This elevated ledge will hold their body heat through the night. The floor below acts as a trap for cold air, which settles quietly at their feet. There's a kind of logic to everything here, an order you don't see in modern living. Nothing is done out of comfort. Everything is done because it works. The walls, slightly inward-leaning, ensure that even if snow starts to soften, it collapses inward safely, not down on the sleepers. The entrance tunnel dips before rising into the chamber, forcing you to crawl, because if you can't stand up, neither can the wind. Someone might laugh at the idea of calling this place home, but you start to see how intimate it feels. The space encourages closeness. No one hides in corners. There aren't any. The warmth comes from togetherness as much as physics. You lie down near the edge, feeling your own breath fog and vanish into the dome. The hunter beside you adjusts the kulik lamp with the careful attention of a priest. It burns seal oil and a strip of moss as the wick. The flame is low but steady, reflecting in his eyes. There's something hypnotic about it. The only moving light in a world of ice. He trims the wick with a small stick and gestures to you, explaining how it works. The lamp's heat, though faint, keeps the inner surface of the igloo at just the right balance, enough to slightly melt the innermost layer, which then refreezes into a thin glaze of ice. That glaze strengthens the dome and seals in warmth even more. Nature's version of double glazing, perfected centuries before anyone patented the idea. You take in the details around you. The walls shimmer faintly, almost translucent, where the lamp's glow hits them. The hunter's gear, fur-lined mitts, harpoons, belts, made of sealskin rests neatly by the wall. Nothing is wasted, nothing left to chance. The sense of order makes you feel calm, even sleepy. You wonder how many nights they've done this, hundreds, maybe thousands. Each generation learning from the ones before, carrying the knowledge forward like an heirloom. It's strange how quickly your body starts to trust the space. The warmth builds layer by layer until the biting chill fades from your fingertips. Your breath mixes with theirs, and suddenly you feel less like a visitor and more like part of something older, an unbroken conversation between humans and the ice itself. You glance up at the ceiling, which curves into a perfect spiral. The more you look, the more it feels alive, like it's breathing with you. Every droplet of condensation that forms, freezes, and melts again seems to echo your pulse. You think of how buildings today hum with electricity and forced air. This one hums with nothing but stillness. It's not built to impress. It's built to endure. One of the hunters starts speaking softly, telling a story in Inuktitut. You can't understand the words, but the rhythm is steady, like wind brushing across snow. You catch a few familiar names: Sedna, the sea goddess; Nanuk, the great bear spirit. The myths are part of the architecture too. In the Arctic, stories aren't for entertainment. They're survival manuals wrapped in metaphor. They remind you who controls what and what happens when you forget. You think of Sedna, who was said to live beneath the sea ice ruler of all marine animals. If humans disrespected her creatures or wasted food, she would withhold her bounty, locking seals and fish away beneath the ice. Maybe that's why the hunters move with such reverence, never taking more than they need, never treating the hunt as conquest. Your mind drifts for a moment to your own world. Heated apartments, fluorescent lights, walls so thick you never feel the wind. Comfort, yes, but also disconnection. You wonder what it would would feel like to live in rhythm with the elements instead of trying to outsmart them. The hunter beside you stretches out on the caribou furs, pats the space next to him, and says something short, probably sleep. You hesitate. Your body still resists the idea of resting on ice, but curiosity wins. You lie down, and the furs are soft, surprisingly warm. Beneath them, a layer of dry snow insulates from below. You can feel your own heartbeat echo through the ground. The air smells faintly of seal oil and fur, a mix of earth and sea. It's not unpleasant. In fact, it's grounding. You close your eyes and listen. Somewhere above the dome, the wind moans like a tired animal. It's a sound that would have terrified you hours ago. Now it feels distant, almost comforting, like a reminder that you're safely inside. The hunters fall silent one by one, their breathing sinking with the faint hiss of the lamp. The dome glows in a steady orange half-light, and the temperature holds steady. You're surprised to find yourself not shivering. The warmth isn't tropical, it's gentle, steady human warmth. Your mind starts to drift between thoughts, the geometry of snow, the rhythm of breathing, the quiet pride in human adaptability. It's easy to forget that this knowledge, how to build, how to rest, how to sleep, is older than most empires. Here on this frozen plain, survival is a kind of artistry, and tonight you're lying inside its masterpiece. You wake to the faint crackle of frost reforming on the walls, the kind of sound that reminds you you're alive, because the cold hasn't won yet. The first thing you see is the flicker of orange light from the kulik, the ancient lamp that has no right to keep anyone alive in this kind of cold. Yet somehow it does. It's not fire in the way you know fire. There's no roaring flame, no dancing sparks, no smell of burning wood. Just a slow, confident glow that hums with patience. The kulik is more than light, it's legacy. For centuries, Inuit families depended on it as their hearth, their stove, and their spiritual symbol. Made of carved soapstone, it's shaped like a shallow half-moon filled with rendered seal oil. Moss or cotton grass serves as a wick laid in a careful line. One wrong adjustment and the flame smokes. Too much oil and it sputters out. But when tuned just right, it burns clean and steady for hours. You can see why the hunters treat it almost reverently. It's the difference between warmth and frostbite, between soup and starvation. The hunter tending it now moves like a scientist. He adjusts the wick with a sliver of bone eyes narrowed in focus. Every gesture is precise. You remember how your friends back home light scented candles for ambiance. The kulik has ambiance too, except its fragrance is survival itself. It fills the igloo with a faint oily sweetness that clings to your clothes, but also to your gratitude. You sit up slowly, watching how the light glows against the ice. The walls shimmer gold in some places, blue in others, like a frozen aurora trapped inside the dome. It's so beautiful you forget you're supposed to be freezing. There's a quiet irony in that the Arctic, cruelest landscape on Earth, has somehow learned to make beauty out of necessity. The hunter offers you a small bowl. Inside the broth is thick, cloudy, shimmering with oil. It's made from boiled seal meat, a few bits of seaweed, and melted snow. You take a cautious sip. It's rich, salty, and shockingly good. Warmth spreads through your chest like a secret returning home. You suddenly understand how food here isn't just sustenance, it's strategy. Fat equals fuel, and every calorie is a brick in the wall between you and hypothermia. He grins at your expression. Good, he asks. You nod, wiping your mouth with your mitten. He chuckles and adds, better than Starbucks, eh? You laugh though the sound feels strange in such a holy silence. Humor, it turns out, is also insulation. After breakfast, he extinguishes the lamp for a moment to trim the wick. The darkness that follows feels enormous, like the entire Arctic has leaned in to listen. For a few seconds, you understand why ancient Inuit believed the Kulik's light carried spiritual meaning. In old traditions, it wasn't just a heater. It was the fire of life, representing the warmth of the soul. The mother's care, the promise that even in endless night, something still glows. Women once tended these lamps daily, passing down the skill from mother to daughter. They said the light's steadiness reflected a woman's heart. It's hard not to believe that as the flame flickers back to life, steady as a heartbeat. The air feels softer now, like the cold has been politely pushed to the edges. You look around and notice something remarkable. The inner surface of the igloo has glazed over in spots, forming a thin shell of ice. It's the Kulik's subtle handiwork. The faint warmth it releases melts the innermost snow layer, just enough to refreeze, sealing tiny cracks, fortifying the structure, making it even stronger. The fire doesn't destroy, it perfects. Outside, the wind shifts direction, and you hear the whispering groan of the sea ice beneath. It's a reminder that this peace is conditional. No matter how warm it feels, inside the world out there remains a place of quiet violence. The hunters know that. They never get comfortable. Even now, one of them steps out through the tunnel, bundled in layers, to check the dogs. The cold outside will hit him like a slap, but he won't flinch. Out there, he's the intruder. You find yourself mesmerized by how ordinary the extraordinary becomes here. Lighting a lamp, trimming a wick, sipping hot broth, every act is sacred. You think of all the ways we waste energy back home, leaving lights on, microwaving coffee twice, letting warmth slip through open doors. The Inuit would never understand that kind of carelessness. Here, every spark of warmth is a small miracle, and miracles aren't taken for granted. The Kulik burns lower now, its light bending across the hunters' faces as they prepare their gear for the next journey. Harpoon sled traces rope fermits. They check everything in silence, each man knowing exactly what the other needs. There's no command, no hierarchy, just cooperation so natural, it looks like instinct. The same way bees move in a hive or birds shift mid-flight. You notice one hunter, older, quieter, touch the edge of the lamp before leaving. Not dramatically, just a small gesture as though saying thank you. It reminds you of the way someone might brush a photo before heading to war. Respect is built into their rhythm. It's invisible, but everywhere. As you watch them disappear through the tunnel, one by one, you realize that fire here isn't loud or proud. It doesn't roar, it hums. It doesn't demand, it sustains. In the Arctic, survival isn't about dominance. It's about cooperation. The lamp, the snow, the air, the humans, they all negotiate warmth together. And when you finally lie back on your caribou furs again, the glow of the Kulik still painting gold on your eyelids, you can't help but think maybe that's the real secret. They never tried to conquer the cold. They learned how to live with it. You wake again to a new kind of quiet, the kind that follows purpose. The hunters are already dressing, layering hides and fur like sculptors wrapping themselves in their own art. You realize suddenly that their clothing isn't fashion, it's architecture. Each piece is a wall, a roof, a defense. You reach out to touch a sleeve of caribou hide and are startled by how light it feels. How can something this soft hold back 40-degree wind that slices like glass? The answer is air. Always air. It's the unsung hero of Arctic survival. Caribou fur is hollow. each hair a tiny tube of trapped warmth, like millions of microscopic thermos flasks sewn in one living coat. Layer those hides the right way, and you've basically built a wearable igloo. You watch the hunter tie his anorak, the hood ringed with fox fur. He pulls it tight, and the fur forms a perfect halo around his face, breaking up wind currents before they can stab his cheeks. It's pure engineering disguised as style. Even modern polar explorers still borrow this same design, only now they pay thousands of dollars for the privilege. You can't help but grin at the thought that every advanced expedition parka is really just an homage to someone who figured it out with bone needles centuries ago. When he lifts his arms, you notice something clever. The inner layer of his parka is fur side and the outer layer, fur side out. Between them is a whisper thin layer of air that traps heat, yet lets moisture escape. Sweat, after all, is the Arctic's silent assassin. If your clothes get wet, you die faster than ice can form. So Inuit hunters built clothing that breathes like skin, but warms like a furnace. You try to imagine sewing that kind of perfection by hand. No metal zippers, no nylon thread, just bone sinew and hours of concentration. It's humbling. The women back at camp were the engineers of survival, turning fur into science, turning patience into armor. They understood not just how to stitch, but how to think like heat itself. The hunter hands you a pair of boots comics and gestures for you to try them. They're made from sealskin, soft and flexible, lined with dry grass for insulation. You slide your foot in and feel the instant warmth like stepping into a whisper. The grass rustles faintly, keeping your toes dry. You remember reading that even 19th century explorers like Amundsen copied this technique after nearly losing their feet. He called it genius, disguised as simplicity. You look at your own gloves, store-bought and supposedly Arctic rated, and they already feel like jokes in comparison. These people don't just wear clothes, they inhabit them. Their wardrobe is a conversation with nature, each stitch a line of diplomacy. A young hunter catches you studying the folds of his parka and chuckles. You sweat, you freeze, he says, tapping his chest. You move slow, you live. You laugh nervously, but he's dead serious. You think of how back home sweating is a gym badge of honor. Here it's a death sentence. It's humbling how survival flips your logic upside down. He adjusts his hood again, tucking a few strands of fur into place. Then, without a mirror, he tests the seal by breathing through it. His exhaled air fogs the edges, but doesn't seep through. Perfect insulation. It's part ritual, part science experiment. You watch another hunter fasten his mittens with a thong around his neck so they can dangle when removed without falling into snow. Even that tiny detail speaks of centuries of refinement. You can't help but compare it to modern gear with unnecessary pockets and logos. Here function is beauty. When they step outside, you follow, and the shock of cold feels like a slap. Yet they move as if the temperature has politely excused itself. The wind tears across the horizon, catching nothing on their clothing. Their breath freezes mid-air, then vanishes. You feel your own parka flapping wildly, while theirs sits still, aerodynamic in its silence. There's poetry in it. You start to think the Inuit didn't just survive, they designed survival. Everything they wore carried a principle of balance, warmth without wetness, strength without stiffness, silence without stillness. In the world's harshest climate, aesthetics are measured in degrees of life. As you trudge through snow beside them, your boots squeak and slip. Theirs don't. The sealskin soles grip the ice like glue, flexible and warm, a blend of fur and instinct. Each step is whisper quiet a predator's tread. You realize that's not accidental either. Noise scares seals, and seals mean food. Even clothing here hunts with purpose. The group pauses to rest by a ridge. The eldest hunter kneels, brushes frost from his beard, and says something you don't quite catch. He points to his chest, then to the horizon. You ask what it means. He smiles and replies, "The cold teaches patience." That line lingers in your mind longer than it should. You think of how the modern world rewards speed, faster, results faster, Wi-Fi, faster everything. But here rushing kills. The Arctic doesn't care how ambitious you are. It demands humility, and every stitch of their clothing is stitched with that truth. When the hunters return to the igloo, they hang their gear carefully along the wall, letting it dry from body warmth alone. You can see frost melting off the hems, steam rising faintly in the lamplight. The smell of hide and oil fills the air, a reminder that warmth isn't sterile here. It's a live animal earned. Lying back, you run your fingers along the caribou fur under your head. It feels softer now, almost human in its warmth. You close your eyes and realize that comfort in this place doesn't come from abundance. It comes from mastery. You don't conquer the cold. You negotiate with it thread by thread. The night deepens until even the light feels tired. The wind's howl softens to a distant hum, a sound that's half lullaby, half warning. You lie back and feel the strange weight of comfort pressing from above, snow-ice air all resting on you like a giant hand saying, "Don't move too fast." Here, warmth isn't a luxury. It's an equation solved one quiet breath at a time. The hunters begin to prepare for sleep, and you follow their lead. They spread out thick layers of caribou hides over the raised platform fur side up. Beneath them is a thin bedding of snow, which seems ridiculous until you remember that dry snow, like the walls, holds air nature's insulation. It's as if the whole igloo conspires to keep every calorie of heat exactly where it belongs. The eldest hunter pats the bedding and nods for you to lie down. You hesitate, but curiosity wins again. The hides are astonishingly soft, warmer than any modern sleeping bag you've ever owned. The caribou's hollow fur traps air in such abundance that even a thin layer feels like resting on a gentle furnace. Beneath it, the snow doesn't melt. It's so dry and compact that it stays firm, an unlikely mattress that neither chills nor softens. You stretch out and exhale. The warmth spreads like a tide. It's not the kind of heat that roars, it's the kind that seeps. The lamp's glow flickers low, painting the walls in lazy gold. The hunters curl beside you, wrapped in additional hides, their movements efficient, silent. You notice they sleep close, not from sentiment, but strategy. Body heat is communal here. The Arctic doesn't reward distance. You can hear one of them humming softly, a tune so low it almost blends with the wind. It might be a lullaby, or maybe just habit. Either way, the sound lulls you too. You find yourself thinking of your own bedroom back home. Electric heater, humming bed piled with blankets, yet somehow never as comforting as this. Isn't that strange? How the body trusts simplicity more than comfort when it's built on purpose? You shift slightly, and the fur crackles faintly beneath you. The air tastes clean like metal, and snow mixed with faint seal oil. You try to imagine how many nights like this these people have lived, sleeping on the ice as if it were nothing unusual. Generations of them breathing in rhythm with storms, turning the impossible into routine. There's a story one of the hunters mentioned earlier about a man named Kala. He was a hunter who once fell asleep on the open sea ice after a long chase, too tired to build shelter. When he woke, his eyelashes had frozen shut, but the warmth of his dogs had kept him alive. He learned the hunter had said with a grin never to argue with the wind again. You can almost picture it, Kala curled up against his sled, his breath rising in tiny halos, his survival owed not to defiance, but surrender. You wonder what your modern instincts would do out here. Probably panic. Call for help. Search for Wi-Fi that doesn't exist. The Inuit don't panic, they prepare. They respect the physics of their world and trust the wisdom that's been tested 1,000 times over. They don't gamble on luck. They build for certainty. You turn your head toward the lamp. The flame has been lowered now to a faint, steady pulse. It's deliberate. Too much heat would melt the snow platform beneath you, making the bedding damp, ruining everything. The hunters monitor the air without thermometers, reading it through their skin. One of them reaches up and adjusts the lamp with a fingertip, the way a pianist corrects a single note. Perfect balance restored. The temperature in the igloo stabilizes around 0, just above freezing. Your breath fogs softly before disappearing. It's enough. Enough to keep the ice solid, the air dry, the humans alive. You realize now that sleeping on ice isn't literal. It's choreography. A precise dance between warmth and restraint. Your eyes grow heavy. You can hear the snow shifting faintly outside, the low sigh of the wind brushing against the dome. Inside you hear the creak of fur, a cough, a slow exhale. It's not silence exactly, more like the quiet conversation of endurance. You think about how every human everywhere has this need to rest, to trust the night won't take them. But here that trust has to be earned. It's a strange comfort knowing the ice below you could kill you if you disrespected it, but also realizing it's what's keeping you alive. The paradox feels ancient, almost holy. You picture early explorers who tried to imitate this and failed, their tents shredded by storms, their fires snuffed out by wind. They called the Arctic inhospitable, but maybe that was just their ego talking. The Inuit never asked the land to be gentle. They learned to be gentle with it. Your mind drifts to small modern absurdities. Hotel beds with 10 pillows, electric blankets that make you sweat, double-glazed windows keeping out the faintest draft. And yet here you are, lying on ice wrapped in fur, warmer and calmer than you've been in years. Maybe it's because there's no noise, no light, no endless scrolling, just snow breath and heartbeat. The flame of the kulik flickers one last time before settling into stillness. You close your eyes and listen. There's something poetic in the way the Arctic teaches sleep, not by comfort, but by surrender. You breathe slower, and for the first time, the cold doesn't feel like an enemy. It feels like a teacher. Outside, the world continues its endless winter. Inside, you dream in silence. You dream in colors you've never seen before, blues that hum, whites that whisper. When you wake, you realize the Arctic has a strange magic. It doesn't just freeze the body, it rearranges the soul. The blizzard has passed, leaving the world glassy and still a pale infinity stretching in every direction. You blink at the light filtering through the walls. It's soft and milky, as if the igloo itself is waking up with you. For a few seconds you forget where you are. Then the air reminds you, clean, sharp, honest. You sit up wrapped in fur, feeling your body stretch like a thawing river. Around you, the hunters stir, yawning, murmuring in Inuktitut. Their laughter is gentle, almost musical. They don't rush to rise. In the Arctic, even morning has to be earned. One of them tosses you a chunk of frozen meat. Breakfast. You bite into it gingerly. It's chewy, salty, and tastes vaguely like ocean and smoke. The warmth from the lamp makes it edible, but not cozy. You chew anyway, and the rhythm of it syncs with your heartbeat. Out here, food is fuel, not comfort. Still, there's something meditative about the act, like the body is thanking the day for another chance to exist. As you eat, one of the hunters tells you that dreams carry meaning here. When the blizzard sings to you, he says it's not anger, it's memory. The idea lingers in your head. You realize the Inuit don't separate the physical from the spiritual. The storm, the wind, the cold, they're alive participants in life's conversation. You can't dominate them. You can only negotiate. He points to the wall where faint frost patterns spiral across the ice like veins of silver. They are spirits too, he says. The ancestors watch. You trace one with your gloved finger. It feels cold, of course, but also strangely delicate. Like the Arctic itself is made of memory. Then the oldest hunter starts to hum a deep, resonant tone that seems to come from the earth. It's not a song in any Western sense, no melody you could hum along to. It's a vibration steady and low, meant to keep rhythm with the heart. Others join in their voices, blending with the sound of wind outside, until you can't tell where the humans end and the storm begins. For a moment you close your eyes and let the sound carry you. You remember nights back home scrolling through endless notifications, trying to quiet your mind before bed. And you think how ironic. Out here surrounded by nothing, you've never felt more connected. In the old days, hunters believed that dreams could warn of danger or guide them to the next hunt. Sleep wasn't escape, it was dialogue. They'd wake and discuss what they'd seen. A seal, a crack in the ice, a name whispered by ancestors. Everything meant something. Even exhaustion was a kind of prayer. You ask softly, "Do you ever dream of warmth?" The young hunter grins. "We dream of balance," he replies. That answer hits harder than you expect. Maybe that's what everyone's chasing, balance. Between cold and comfort, between survival and rest, between what we need and what we want. He gestures toward the faint morning light seeping through the dome. "Sun is returning soon," he says. His voice carries quiet reverence. You remember that in winter, the Arctic sun disappears for months, leaving people to navigate darkness without losing faith in its return. How does one sleep without sunrise? How do you dream when the sky forgets to turn blue? And yet they do. They always have. There's an old Inuit belief that during the long dark, humans grow closer to the unseen world. The mind sharpens, the soul listens better. Maybe that's why their stories are full of transformations, humans turning to seal spirits, whispering in snowdrifts, dreams that predict the hunt. You start to realize this isn't superstition. It's survival psychology. When you live months without daylight, imagination isn't luxury, it's light. The elder catches your thoughtful expression and says something that sounds like advice, though you can't grasp every word. The young hunter translates. He says the cold outside isn't the real danger. The cold inside is. You nod slowly, feeling the truth of it. Loneliness, despair, hopelessness, those are the real blizzards. And the Inuit have learned to outlast them by staying connected, by sharing warmth, by keeping the flame literal or otherwise alive. You lie back again, letting that idea settle. The snow roof glows faintly, as if it understands. The igloo isn't just protection, it's symbolism, made solid light inside darkness, breath inside stillness. Every part of it whispers, "You can rest now. You've done enough." In the distance, faint dog barks echo across the plain. The hunters stir, fully awake now, packing up their gear ready to move. The igloo will soon be abandoned, left to melt back into the landscape. That's the way of things here. Nothing is permanent, not even warmth. You ask, don't you ever wish for something more lasting? The young hunter smiles, tightening his hood. Lasting, he repeats. Everything returns. That's lasting enough. And maybe he's right. Maybe permanence is overrated. The Arctic teaches a different kind of eternity, the kind measured in cycles, not monuments. Sleep, wake, hunt, rest, rebuild. You feel it now, the rhythm of existence stripped down to its essential heartbeat. You step outside with them for a moment, squinting against the blinding white. The cold nips at your eyelashes again, but this time it feels less hostile. You breathe in, and the air tastes like clarity itself. The land stretches infinite yet intimate, as if it knows your name now. You realize, with a small, sleepy smile, that maybe you could learn to love this. Not the cold itself, but what it teaches to dream in stillness, to rest without fear, to believe that warmth is never truly gone. It's just waiting to be remembered. The calm never lasts forever on the ice. You learn that quickly. One moment the world feels gentle, the next it growls. You wake to a sound that doesn't belong, the deep groaning thunder of shifting ice beneath your bed. It's not loud, but it's unmistakable. Like the earth cracking its knuckles. Every hunter's head turns at once. No one speaks. You've been in this world long enough to recognize that silence now means danger. The eldest hunter tilts his head, listening. The sound rolls again, long, low, vibrating through the floor, like a heartbeat gone wrong. You realize the igloo is sitting on a moving plate of sea ice, a frozen raft adrift on the Arctic Ocean. Somewhere below, black water yawns. You feel it in your stomach before you even see the crack forming near the entrance. The hunters move instantly, gathering gear with practiced speed. There's no panic, only precision. The lamp is doused, the tunnel cleared the sled, repacked in less than 2 minutes. You fumble with your boots, still half asleep, but they move with quiet grace, as though every second has already been rehearsed. Maybe it has after all. The ice never sleeps. You crawl out into the open, and the cold smacks you in the face like a reprimand. The sky is pale gray now, heavy with promise of more snow. The igloo behind you sags slightly, one side drooping, where the crack has widened beneath it. The youngest hunter looks back, expression unreadable. Then he lifts his hand to his chest, a small gesture of respect for what's about to be lost, and turns away. That, too, is part of life here, letting go before something takes you. You hear a sound like slow applause. The ice plates grinding against each other, fracturing further. It's eerie, ancient, beautiful, and terrifying all at once. You can't help thinking that if the world ever decided to exhale, it would sound like this. The hunters lead you away from the weak spot toward firmer ground. Your breath forms halos around your head as you walk. Beneath your boots, the snow feels different, softer in places, hollow in others. Test with pole, one hunter says, handing you a stick. You poke the ground ahead before stepping. The ice answers each touch with its own language of echoes and cracks. Every step is a negotiation. A gust of wind sweeps across the plain, kicking up fine crystals that sting your face. You pull your hood tighter, your breath rasping in your throat. The temperature's dropped again, but fear keeps you warm. It's strange how survival feels like a physical emotion, part instinct, part humility. When you finally reach stable ground, the hunters pause. One kneels and brushes snow aside, checking for subtle color changes in the ice. Another listens with his ear pressed close, as if tuning in to the world's slow heartbeat. You realize how absurd it is to call them primitive. They're scientists of their own domain, using senses most of us have forgotten. The wind shifts again, and with it comes a low hissing sound. Carbon dioxide rising from a fissure nearby. You'd never have noticed, but they do. The eldest waves you back immediately. Bad air, he says, covering his mouth. It's a quiet reminder that the Arctic doesn't always attack loudly. Sometimes it kills with silence. Trapped gases can pool near low spots, invisible and deadly. The hunters move upwind without hesitation. You follow, chastened by how much you still don't know. Once they find a safe spot, they begin rebuilding the shelter. This time it's smaller, just enough for a quick rest. You watch them carve blocks again. Movements quick and efficient, despite the cold biting at their fingers. There's no frustration, no complaint. They've accepted the ice as both enemy and friend. You remember something one of them said last night? The sea ice feeds us and eats us. We just don't taste good enough yet. That humor again, dry, disarming, and necessary. Without it, maybe no one would survive here at all. When the new igloo is ready, you crawl inside. It's simpler, tighter, but it feels safe. The hunters light the lamp again, and warmth returns tentative but real. You can hear the old igloo collapsing in the distance, the sound muffled by snow. It's like hearing a house exhale. You feel a strange sadness, as though you've lost something personal. The eldest sees your expression and nods slowly. Everything melts, he says. But we build again. He says it casually, not as comfort, but as fact. And you realize that's what endurance really means here. It's us not never breaking. It's always rebuilding. You settle onto the furs, heart still beating fast. The lamplight flickers across the walls, painting them gold. Outside, the wind begins to rise again, dragging fine snow into the air. You imagine the sea ice shifting far below, groaning like an old creature turning in its sleep. For a while, no one speaks. The only sounds are the lamp's hiss and the distant cracking of the world beneath you. Then one hunter chuckles softly. City people pay money for this sound, he says, pretending to meditate. The others laugh quietly. Even here, surrounded by danger humor, is warmth. You join in your breath, mingling with theirs, the laughter turning into steam that vanishes into the roof. You think about how fragile life feels in this place. A shift of ice, a mistake with a lamp, a wrong breath of air. Yet the Inuit move through it all with calm dignity. Their relationship with danger isn't avoidance. It's familiarity. They know death is always near, but they never let it interrupt dinner. Later, as you lie down again, you glance at the small hole near the top of the dome where smoke escapes. Through it, you can see the faint shimmer of northern lights twisting across the sky. Green ribbons swirling silent, mesmerizing. You imagine that if the ice ever told stories, it would tell them in colors like those. And before your eyes close again, you understand something deeper. The Arctic doesn't forgive mistakes, but it rewards respect. Every night survived here isn't luck. It's a dialogue between human patience and the planet's indifference. A quiet truce written in breath, fur, and snow. Morning comes without sunlight, just a gradual lifting of the darkness. The igloo glows faintly, a pearl adrift on a gray horizon. You sit up, stretching stiff limbs, and the first sound you hear is laughter. It's the kind of laughter that comes from relief, from men who faced the night and found themselves still here to joke about it. The eldest hunter stirs the lamp back to life, while another melts snow in a pot, the steam ghosting upward into the air vent. Today is for the hunt. You feel it in their movements, no wasted energy, no hesitation. Each man checks his gear. Harpoons, sharpened lashings tighten the sled ready. The dogs tied nearby bounce in quiet anticipation, their breath fogging the air like small engines. You can smell the faint mix of fur seal oil and cold metal, the perfume of survival. You step outside and the world assaults you again with its brightness. The storm has cleared completely. The horizon stretches pure and endless, reflecting so much light it hurts to look at. Even with fur-lined hoods, the glare stings your eyes. The air tastes like steel. You feel tiny and afterthought, walking across a frozen sea. The hunters move ahead, gliding on sleds, pulled by the dogs, their silhouettes elegant against the white. You follow, clutching the sled's frame as it jerks forward. The rhythm becomes hypnotic. Dogs, panting runners, hissing snow, creaking under weight. The wind rushes past your ears, filling your head with nothing but motion. You could almost forget the cold, if it didn't sting every patch of exposed skin. Hours pass. They read the ice like a map, tilting their heads to hear distant echoes, scanning for tiny fissures that betray breathing holes. You'd never notice them, but they do. Everything here speaks, just not in your language. When one of them stops suddenly and raises a hand, you learn what focus looks like in its purest form. The lead hunter kneels, studying a seal hole, an opening in the ice, kept from freezing by the animal's breath. He signals for silence. Even the dogs obey, curling down into the snow, as if they understand reverence. The hunter readies his harpoon, eyes locked on the small black circle of water. The world narrows to that one point. You can feel your own heartbeat speeding, matching the rhythm of his breath. Minutes pass, maybe hours. The cold bites deeper, but you dare not move. Then a sudden puff of steam there. The seal rises for air. The hunter strikes in one smooth motion, no hesitation, no drama. The sound is a whisper. The rest of the men move instantly, pulling the catch free, working with efficient gratitude. No celebration, just murmured thanks to the sea, to the animal, to the balance that still holds. You realize how deeply respect is built into every act. They never boast. They never take more than they can carry. They know the ice listens. In their culture, arrogance invites misfortune. The sea remembers. The seal is hauled onto the sled, its body wrapped carefully to preserve the meat and oil. That oil will become light heat and nourishment, the same fire that warmed you last night. You start to understand the circle now. What they hunt fuels what they build. What they build shelters what they are. It's all one system, closed and perfect, as long as no one breaks the rules. The youngest hunter glances back at you and grins, teeth flashing in the white light. "Now you sleep well tonight," he says, patting the sled. "Warm stomach, warm dreams." You laugh despite yourself. The phrase sounds simple, but in this place, it's practically scripture. As you head back the sled, groaning softly under its new weight, the wind picks up again. Snow whirls around you like mist. The path back is invisible now, but the hunters move without pause. They navigate by memory, by landmarks too subtle for your untrained eyes. A ridge shaped like a frozen wave, a crack that sings a certain pitch. These are their road signs. You start to grasp how the Arctic rewires the human mind. It demands a new kind of intelligence, one that listens instead of declares. When you finally glimpse the faint mound of the igloo in the distance, it looks impossibly small. A single white bubble against a white sea. Yet you know now that inside that bubble lies everything: fire, food, rest, and safety. Civilization in a snowball. The hunters waste no time. The seal is processed outside meat, divided cleanly, fat rendered for oil. The smell is heavy, but grounding. They work quickly before the frost can steal fingers. You help where you can, fumbling with numb hands, earning a few chuckles and patient nods. The camaraderie warms you as much as the work. By dusk, the lamp burns again, fed by fresh oil. The igloo fills with gentle heat and the rich scent of cooked meat. The hunters eat slowly, reverently, passing small portions and stories in equal measure. One recounts a storm from years past, where he lost his sled and walked 3 days home by following the northern lights. They guide you, if you ask nicely, he says, winking. The others laugh softly, shaking their heads. You eat 2 greasy fingers, aching jaw, heart full. You're exhausted, but it's the good kind of exhaustion. The kind that belongs to people who've earned their rest. You glance at the flickering flame of the kulik and realize you finally understand its glow. It's not just fire, it's continuation. Every hunt, every breath, every story fuels it. The youngest hunter catches you staring and says, "Tomorrow we build new shelter farther south. Ice there is stronger." You nod, though you feel strange sadness at the thought of leaving this dome behind. He sees it on your face and smiles. "Don't worry," he says. "The snow remembers us." That thought settles over you as you lie back once more. The storm hums outside the lamp, hums inside, and somewhere in between. Your body surrenders to sleep. You understand now why they call this rest the warm death, not because it kills, but because it erases everything that doesn't matter. You drift off, listening to the faint click of melting snow. The ice may shift, the wind may rise, but tonight, you are part of the rhythm, a heartbeat within the white silence. You don't realize it at first, but the cold has changed you. Not just the temperature in your bones, but the quiet it left behind. You wake to that same white horizon, but this time it doesn't feel like emptiness. It feels like clarity. You step out of the igloo, your breath curling upward, and for a moment you just stand there, letting the Arctic stare you down. You don't flinch anymore. You've learned its rhythm. The hunters are already at work dismantling what's left of last night's shelter. They cut out the best snow blocks to reuse, leaving the rest to melt back into the landscape. There's no sentimentality here. The igloo isn't sacred because it lasts. It's sacred because it serves. Watching them, you realize how much of the world's wisdom we mistake for permanence. The Inuit know better. Their strength lies in movement, in harmony, not resistance. The eldest hunter catches you watching and gestures at the horizon. Everything travels, he says simply. The wind, the ice, the people, the spirits all in motion. You nod, thinking of how even warmth here moves in circles. The hunted seal becomes the lamp. The lamp keeps you alive. Your breath returns to the sky. The snow remembers and waits. The dogs are barking now, eager tails cutting through the air like metronomes. The sleds are packed. The men move with the same calm focus they had the night before, unhurried but deliberate. You find yourself copying their pace, slow, efficient, almost meditative. The world beyond the Arctic feels so far away, a place of noise, rush excess. Here, everything is reduced to what matters. You step forward, and the snow gives that familiar squeak, sharp and clean. The air is brutal, but you barely notice. The layers of caribou and sealskin hug your body like second skin. The cold no longer feels like an enemy. It's a conversation partner now. You've learned to listen. As you travel, the sun finally peaks above the horizon, a thin gold line stretching across the world. It doesn't rise high, never does. But its return feels monumental. The hunters pause, faces lifted toward it, eyes squinting. No one speaks. For them, sunlight isn't a given. It's a reunion. You feel your throat tighten a little, unexpectedly emotional. You didn't know you'd missed it this much. The youngest hunter breaks the silence. "See," he says, grinning. "The world forgives." You smile back, though you suspect the world doesn't forgive so much as it endures. But maybe that's enough. As the sled glides onward, you think of everything the past nights have shown you. How snow became shelter, how fur became architecture, how stillness became warmth, how sleep became ceremony. These people never fought the elements, they learned their language. It's the opposite of everything you were taught, that survival means conquering, mastering, controlling. But here power comes from cooperation. Harmony is the only fire that never goes out. You think of the kulik, the tiny lamp whose flame held the dark at bay. It burned seal oil in silence, fueled by reverence rather than dominance. Maybe that's the real story of the Arctic, not just how the Inuit survived it, but how they refused to hate it, how they built peace with something everyone else called impossible. A memory flickers back, the first night you're panicked, the way your breath came out in gasps, your disbelief that anyone could sleep on ice. Now you almost laugh at yourself. The cold didn't change it, never does. You did. You adapted layer by layer, like snow learning to hold its own weight. The sled halts at a rise, overlooking a vast frozen bay. From here, the ice stretches forever, a mosaic of cracks and reflections. The wind rushes over it, lifting plumes of snow that shimmer like spirits. The hunters unload quietly, scanning for new hunting grounds. You realize you'll never see this exact place again. It will melt, shift, vanish. And that's fine. The Arctic doesn't promise return. It promises rhythm. The eldest hunter begins building the base for a new igloo. The youngest tosses you the snow knife, smiling. "Your turn," he says. You hesitate, then start cutting, clumsy but determined. The block falls clean edges, crisp. You lift it heavy but perfect and slot it into place. The men nod, approving. You feel a flicker of pride, not for building a wall, but for understanding what it means. The snow squeaks, the wind hums, the light turns gold against the white. The world looks simple again. You realize that maybe this is what the Inuit have known all along. Survival isn't about beating nature, it's about belonging to it. To sleep on ice without freezing isn't magic. It's humility made visible. It's trust built into snow. You take one last look at the horizon, at the faint blush of sun reflected across endless frost. It's not warm, but it's honest. You exhale slowly, the vapor rising and twisting away. In the silence that follows, the world feels vast and kind. And when night comes again, and the lamp glows in the new dome of snow, you lie down on the caribou fur and close your eyes. The wind howls outside the flame, whispers inside, and somewhere between them you drift into that ancient rhythm of human endurance, the same one that has kept people alive here for thousands of years. You're no longer just visiting the Arctic. You've become part of its memory. As the last echoes of wind fade against the snow dome, you begin to wonder, how did these hunters ever find food beneath all this frozen silence? The answer lies below the ice itself. Long before sonar or satellites, Inuit hunters read the breathing patterns of seals like a secret language whispered through the frost. The first thing you hear isn't the wind. It's the silence pretending to be sound. The Arctic doesn't roar at you right away. It waits, testing if you'll notice how alive the quiet really is. You exhale and your breath turns to smoke before vanishing, as if the air itself refuses to remember you. Everything around you, the snow, the ice, the pale horizon, looks like a blank page. But here, every blank hides a story. You take a step forward, and the snow under your boots squeaks soft and sharp at the same time. That tiny sound feels almost rude, as if you've interrupted the universe mid-thought. You start to understand that in this world, noise means weakness. The hunters ahead of you glide soundlessly, their feet reading the snow as if it were braille. You wonder, how do you even begin to track a creature that hides beneath the ice, breathing only through pinholes the size of your thumb? Your eyelashes already feel heavy with frost, and the air stings your nostrils like a warning. The men around you move without speaking, their parkas puffed with caribou fur, their faces blank with focus. It's not boredom, it's calibration. Every sense they have is tuned outward, reading the invisible. Out here, the line between surviving and freezing isn't bravery, it's attention. You stop and look down. The ice beneath you is thick layered like glass frosting on steel. You can't see through it, but the hunters can. Not with their eyes exactly, more like with their instincts. They walk this landscape so long that they can feel the thickness of ice through the soles of their boots. The sound of a step, the vibration, the echo, it all speaks to them. It's not superstition. It's physics, practiced long enough to become faith. The youngest hunter, barely more than 20, crouches and presses his ear to the ice. You watch, breath held. He's listening for something you can't hear, a hollow resonance, a faint gurgle, maybe even the breath of a seal somewhere below. Then he points. A gluit, he whispers. You don't know the word yet, but you can tell it matters. Later you'll learn it means breathing hole. It seems impossible. How could anyone detect life under this frozen desert? But for the Inuit, this is a skill as basic as reading a street sign. Each seal keeps several breathing holes spread over its territory, returning to them regularly to breathe and rest. The holes look like nothing more than small patches of rough snow, yet the hunters can spot them even in a whiteout. Centuries of survival have trained their eyes to see the slightest difference in texture, the smallest dark fleck, the faintest dip. The hunter gestures for you to kneel. You obey, lowering yourself until your cheek nearly touches the snow. There it is, a small indentation, subtle but deliberate, like the ghost of a handprint. You can smell the salt, faintly, the ocean's breath trapped under a lid of ice. He brushes away the loose frost with his mitten, revealing a dark pinhole. That's it. That tiny hole connects two worlds, air and water, hunter and prey. He grins at your expression. Seal lives here, he says softly, tapping the edge with his chisel. He breathes. We wait. His tone isn't boastful, it's factual. You think about how modern people use drones, satellites, and sonar to track life on Earth. And yet here a man and a chisel still win the game. The wind shifts slightly, brushing against your hood. Somewhere in the distance, the dogs whine, sensing the stillness. The hunters begin marking other holes nearby, creating a silent network of stations. Later, when the time is right, they'll return to each one, waiting motionless for hours, until the seal rises for air. You can almost feel the patience it takes, the reverence of waiting for life to surface. You glance around. The Arctic stretches endlessly, blinding in its brightness. But for the hunters, this isn't emptiness, it's information. The tilt of a snowdrift, the shine of an ice ridge, the shape of a frost pattern, all clues in a frozen language. They don't fight the cold. They converse with it. One of them chuckles softly as you shiver. The wind is teacher, he says, tightening his hood. You nod, half understanding. Out here, even pain is a form of education. You try to imagine what this place would feel like without the guidance of these men. The idea alone makes your stomach twist. The Arctic doesn't forgive curiosity without knowledge. It looks beautiful, yes, but so does a sleeping predator. The trick is learning which kind of silence you're standing on, the safe kind that hides life, or the dangerous kind that hides nothing at all. The hunters finish marking the area, their movements smooth, synchronized, almost graceful. It's like watching musicians tune instruments you can't hear. They shoulder their harpoons and begin the long walk back toward their sleds. You follow, and the cold makes your breath wheeze. But something about the stillness feels different now. It's not emptiness, it's awareness. You take one last look at the dark hole in the ice. It's just a dot in an ocean of white. But now you see it the way they do, as a doorway. Somewhere beneath it, a seal swims, breathing the same air you do, never seeing your face, but living at the edge of your patience. The hunter beside you smiles slightly. If you listen long enough, he says, the ice will tell you who lives beneath. You start noticing the sound of your own footsteps more carefully, now the difference between a crunch, a creak, and a sigh. The hunters told you the snow speaks, but you hadn't realized it actually has dialects. Each texture has its own accent. Crisp snow snaps like glass. New snow whispers like silk. And deep, wind-packed drifts groan like sleeping beasts. To them, that's not poetry, it's navigation. The snow under your boots right now, for instance, is dry and squeaky. That means it's brittle, full of air, good for walking, but terrible for hiding sound. The eldest hunter looks over his shoulder and shakes his head gently, motioning for you to spread your weight more evenly. You mimic his soft, sliding step, half walk, half glide, and suddenly the snow quiets beneath you. That's the first lesson. The Arctic only trusts the quiet ones. You crouch low as he stops again, pressing his palm into the snow's surface. He scoops up a handful, crushes it between his fingers, and lets it fall. Too new, he mutters. Not good for tracking. You ask what he means, and he smiles faintly. Fresh snow covers truth, he says. Then he points to the horizon, where faint ridges ripple across the white plain. Old snow tells stories. When you finally reach the older drifts, you start to see what he means. The wind has etched tiny runes into the surface lines, curls even small pits. To your untrained eyes, it looks random. But to him, it's a newspaper printed by the sky. The hunters can tell which way the wind blew yesterday, where the seals broke through to breathe, and which snow ridges are hollow below. It's like watching someone read a book upside down and backward while you're still learning the alphabet. The youngest hunter crouches and brushes away some powder. Look, he says. At first you see nothing. Then faintly, there it is, a single round depression, maybe half a meter wide. The snow around it has settled unevenly, the edges smoother than the rest. Old agluit, he explains. A breathing hole abandoned weeks ago, now frozen shut, but still visible if you know how to look. You realize how absurdly delicate their work is. It's not like hunting deer or tracking footprints in mud. These men are decoding shadows on shadow signs of things that don't want to be seen. The Arctic erases evidence faster than any crime scene on Earth. And yet somehow, the Inuit learned to find stories written in erasure. He points to another pattern, a swirl of tiny frost crystals that catch the light differently from the rest. See that shine, he asks. You nod uncertainly. Warm air came up here, once, he says. Seal breath. It melted snow just a little. The frost now refrozen marks where life exhaled. You blink, amazed that something as fleeting as breath could leave a signature visible weeks later. For a moment you think of modern tracking tools, thermal cameras, drones, satellites. And then you look at this man, kneeling in silence, reading wind and ice like sacred text. Technology may have replaced skill, but it hasn't replaced attention. The wind picks up again, stinging your cheeks. One hunter raises his arm, signaling the others to pause. They kneel instinctively, backs to the wind, letting the snow whip over them like ghosts passing. You huddle down too, feeling how the world closes its mouth. The air thickens, the sky dulls. The horizon vanishes. White swallows white. You'd panic maybe if you were alone. But they don't. They simply wait. Patience is their compass. After a few minutes, the wind drops again, and the world reappears as if nothing happened. She just wanted to remind us who's boss, one mutters, smirking. You realize they talk about nature like it's an old friend who occasionally yells but never lies. They move again, leading you toward a frozen ridge where the ice meets the snow in a jagged seam. The eldest stops and presses his ear close, eyes closed. You follow his lead and kneel beside him. At first, all you hear is your pulse. But then, faintly, there's another sound, a low, hollow thump followed by a long pause. Then another. You glance at him, startled. He smiles knowingly. "Seal under there," he whispers. You stay still, listening. The sound feels alive, slow, rhythmic. It's the seal pushing through slush beneath the ice, clearing a passage. You realize the hunters could track a creature without ever seeing it, not by footprints, not by scent, but by breath, vibration, and memory. They've memorized every tone the ice can make, and which ones mean dinner. The young hunter gestures for silence and draws a small mark on the snow, indicating where they'll return later. They never hunt right away. They observe, map, and move on. Impatience wastes energy. "Snow remembers," he says. You repeat the phrase under your breath, half as a mantra, half as disbelief. When you finally stand, your knees ache, but you feel oddly exhilarated. You start to look at the snow differently. Every ripple, every gleam, every patch of crust becomes suspiciously meaningful. It's like suddenly learning a new alphabet after years of being illiterate. The hunters begin walking again, their pace unhurried but precise. You follow behind, realizing you've stopped thinking of this as a wasteland. It's more like a living book that only opens for those who move quietly enough to read it. And for the first time, you find yourself listening, not just with your ears, but with your whole body. By now you've learned that silence here doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything is listening. Beneath your boots, an entire world moves in slow motion. Seals swimming through black water, their breath rising toward pinholes in the ice, like invisible prayers. The hunters stop again, crouching low. You sense that the lesson is about to change from reading snow to reading breath itself. The youngest hunter points to a patch of wind-packed snow. To you, it looks like every other patch of snow in this endless white void. But to him, it's a doorway. He brushes away a thin crust, revealing a hole no bigger than your palm. It looks insignificant until you notice the faint ring of frost crystals around the rim, tiny as powdered sugar. That ring, he tells you, is made of frozen vapor, proof that a seal has been exhaling here, warming the air just enough to leave a trace before it freezes again. You kneel closer. The air rising from that hole is almost imperceptible. But when you lower your glove above it, you feel a whisper of warmth, a ghost of breath from something alive beneath. He comes here every few hours, the hunter murmurs. Always the same holes, always careful. But the ice remembers. You feel your heart beating faster. There's something miraculous about it, a creature surviving under this vast sheet of deathly cold, keeping tiny windows open to the sky. You picture it below, round, and silver gray eyes, wide whiskers, twitching lungs. burning, waiting for the moment to rise and breathe. It's both fragile and unstoppable, just like the hunters chasing it. The eldest gestures for you to look farther out. At irregular intervals, other holes dot the plain. Some are fresh, glistening with frost, others old and sealed over. Together they form a constellation, a map of survival carved into the ice. The hunters know each one by memory. You can't chase the seal, he explains. You find where he already plans to be. You can't help thinking how different that is from modern hunting, where people stalk, track, and predict through gadgets. Here, the only technology is patience. The Inuit don't fight chaos. They anticipate rhythm. It's not aggression, it's choreography. The young hunter takes out his ice chisel, a slender rod with a bone handle. He taps the edge of the hole, lightly chipping away the fragile frost, until the opening widens, just enough for him to see the black water glinting below. Still breathing, he says, listening closely. You lean forward and hear it too, a faint bubbling sound like someone blowing through a straw in milk. Seal's world, he says, softly smiling. Same water, same air, same life. We just visit longer. The wind brushes your cheek, sharp as needles. The hunters mark the hole with a small ivory stick carved into the shape of a seal's flipper. It's not just decoration, it's a memory marker. In a storm, when the entire world goes blank, they'll find this exact spot again by counting steps and trusting instinct. You wonder how often they've done this, how many generations have passed down this exact movement of marking, waiting, remembering. The eldest sits beside one of the holes, his body still as sculpture. Watch, he says. You obey. For minutes, nothing happens. Then faintly the snow trembles. A thin plume of vapor drifts upward. He smiles. Seal breath, he whispers. It's like watching a ghost breathe through the floor. That's when you finally understand the word patience, the way these men mean it. It's not waiting. It's listening until the world reveals itself. You remember reading once about an explorer named Knud Rasmussen, who traveled with Inuit hunters in the early 1900s. He wrote that they could wait beside a breathing hole for 12 hours without moving their eyelashes crusted with ice, their muscles numb. They seem carved from snow, he said. Yet they live warmer than we do. At the time, you thought he was exaggerating. Now, watching these hunters, you know he wasn't. The young hunter gestures toward the harpoons stacked beside the sled. Each one is made from polished bone and sinew fitted with a toggle head that detaches under pressure, ensuring a clean strike. The design is centuries old, and yet not a single modern engineer could improve it. Efficiency here isn't a choice. It's survival's purest form. He pulls one from the pile and balances it lightly on his palm. You don't throw hard, he says. You throw right. The phrase sounds simple, but it feels like wisdom for everything. Not just hunting. The seal breathes again, soft and steady. The hunter lowers the harpoon, not to strike yet, only to feel the distance, to learn the rhythm. This could take hours. No one fidgets. No one speaks. They're listening for life through a ceiling of death. You shift your weight slightly, and one of the hunters gives you a gentle side eye. You freeze. Even the smallest noise, a scrape, a breath, can send the seal away for good. You feel a strange guilt, like you've broken a sacred rule. The hunter nods once, forgiving, but you can sense the lesson underneath in this place. Noise is arrogance. The air feels heavier now, thicker with meaning. You look around and realize that every part of this environment, the snow, the ice, the wind, is part of the same conversation. The hunters aren't chasing the seal. They're waiting to be included in its rhythm. Somewhere deep below, the seal glides silently, unaware of your awe. It has its own map, its own patience, its own intelligence. Maybe that's what binds them, the hunter and the hunted, each surviving by knowing the other's breath. Imagine holding perfectly still for hours, while your eyelashes freeze together, and knowing that one careless breath could cost you dinner. That's what the Inuit call the art of still hunting. You might call it madness. But here, where calories are life and warmth comes from fat, madness looks a lot like genius. You're kneeling beside a breathing hole now, the one you marked earlier. The light has changed, lower, colder, the sun sliding along the horizon like it's too tired to climb. The hunters have formed a loose circle, each man claiming a hole, each statue-like in the snow. You can hear nothing but your own heart hammering in your chest. The eldest hunter motions for you to settle in. You kneel, wrapping your fur hood tighter, your body already stiffening. He places a mittened finger to his lips. "No move," he whispers. "No breathe loud." The rules are simple enough. Following them, however, is another matter entirely. The hours begin to blend. The cold seeps through your layers like slow smoke. At first you try to distract yourself by counting breaths, then by humming in your head, then by thinking of home-heated rooms, buzzing lights, coffee that doesn't freeze mid-air. But the Arctic doesn't care about nostalgia. It teaches focus by erasing every other option. You sneak a glance at the hunters nearby. None of them move. They don't even seem to blink. Their spears rest gently across their knees, hands poised near the throwing line. They're not just still, they're synchronized, tuned to something below that you can't sense. The young hunter had explained it earlier. A seal surfaces every 20 to 30 minutes to breathe. If it hears or smells anything wrong, one whiff of human scent, one faint vibration, it moves to another hole, maybe a kilometer away. A single mistake can waste an entire day. You're suddenly aware of how loud you are. Every heartbeat sounds like thunder in your ears. Time starts to distort. You lose track of whether you've been kneeling for 1 hour or 3. The cold wraps around your fingers, turning them from pain to numbness, from numbness to something beyond feeling. You think of the Inuit word sila. It means both weather and spirit. Out here, the two are the same. And then something shifts. You don't hear it, but you feel it. A pulse beneath the ice, faint as a sigh. The eldest hunter's hand tightens on his harpoon. His body doesn't move, but the air around him changes. He's awake in a way that has nothing to do with sight. A small exhalation escapes the breathing hole. It sounds almost gentle, like a bubble popping. Then a faint spray of frost drifts upward, glinting in the dim night. The hunter waits, counting heartbeats you can't hear, then strikes. It's not a violent motion. It's quick, precise, clean. The harpoon slides through the snow, the line zipping after it. The sound is so quiet you almost miss it, and yet it cuts through the silence like a hymn. The others move instantly, steady hands pulling the rope, anchoring the shaft. No yelling, no frenzy, just controlled urgency. You can feel your breath catch as the hunter leans forward, testing the resistance. There's movement below, faint and heavy. The seal is struggling, twisting in the dark water tethered to the line. The hunter pulls gently, rhythmically, until the motion slows, then stops. When he finally lifts the rope, the line glistens with tiny shards of ice. It's over. You expect cheers or celebration. There's none. The hunters work silently, pulling the body to the surface, careful not to spill or waste. The eldest whispers something, thanks perhaps. The others nod, their faces solemn. You realize this isn't a victory. It's an exchange. Life taken with gratitude, not pride. The young hunter glances at you, smiling faintly. "Now you understand stillness," he says. You nod, though your lips barely move. You do understand, though, not the way you expected. Stillness isn't absence here. It's presence refined. He crouches beside the seal, examining it. This one old, he murmurs. Strong. He lived many winters. There's respect in his tone, not triumph. He runs his hand over the fur, then begins to work with practiced, calm cleaning, preparing, dividing. Every part of the animal will serve a purpose. The meat for food, the oil for the lamp, the hide for clothing, the bones for tools. Nothing wasted, nothing forgotten. You remember reading about explorers who came north centuries ago. Men who starved within sight of seals, too impatient or ignorant to hunt like this. They built fires, shouted commands, tried to conquer the Arctic by sheer will. The Inuit watched quietly and buried them later. The ice doesn't reward arrogance. It rewards adaptation. When the work is done, the hunters cover the breathing hole with snow again. He will come back, the eldest says softly. You blink. Another seal. He shakes his head. Same spirit, maybe different body. Always returns. It's not science, but it's not superstition either. It's balance. As they load the sled, you finally stretch your legs, wincing at the pins and needles returning. You realize that patience here isn't passive. It's active, almost athletic. The hunters aren't waiting out the seal. They're aligning with it, syncing with the rhythm of breath, tide, and time. The sky above begins to turn violet, streaked with faint green where the aurora gathers. You find yourself thinking of all the noise back home, the constant hum of heaters, screens, engines. Here, even silence has texture. You've spent the day kneeling beside a hole in the ice, and somehow it feels more meaningful than any meeting you've ever had. One of the hunters laughs softly as he catches you staring at the sky. You like quiet now, he teases. You grin through chapped lips. Maybe I do. Good, he says. That means you're learning to hear. When you wake again, the igloo feels warmer, though no one has added heat. The hunters move quietly, wrapping the seal meat in the snow blocks to keep it from freezing too hard. Outside, the world hums faintly, a low vibration that could be wind or could be the ice shifting far below. You realize that this land never truly sleeps. It only slows its breathing. The eldest hunter gestures for you to follow. Today, he says, we look beneath. The phrase sends a small thrill through you. Beneath what exactly? Beneath the ice, beneath the surface, beneath understanding. You zip your parka and follow his footsteps toward a stretch of frozen sea that looks no different from the rest. The snow crunches in rhythm with your heartbeat. The air is so dry it squeaks when you breathe. The hunters stop at a low ridge where the sunlight hits the ice just right, turning it pale blue and translucent. They kneel, clearing snow away with their mittens until smooth glass appears. Beneath that glass, you see darkness, and if you squint, movement. A shadow flickers, slow and deliberate. Another follows. The water below seems alive, like black velvet shifting under glass. Seals, the youngest hunter whispers. His voice carries awe, not excitement. The ice amplifies every vibration, and for a moment you can almost hear them, soft bursts of bubbles, muffled splashes, the rhythm of life in a place that should be empty. You find yourself pressing closer to the ice, your breath fogging the surface. The eldest stops you gently. Don't breathe on it, he warns. They'll feel the heat. You blink, realizing even your exhale is too loud here. He pulls out a long piece of polished bone, a hunting probe. Its tip is narrow and sharp, used not for killing, but for listening. He presses it lightly to the ice and closes his eyes. When they swim, they make song, he says. You can feel it in your bones. You watch as he moves the probe slowly, sliding it across the ice in tiny arcs. Every few inches he stops, listens, nods. The rest of the hunters spread out doing the same. It looks like a silent orchestra tuning for a concert no one else can hear. You try it yourself, laying your gloved hand flat against the ice. At first, nothing, just cold, absolute, and unforgiving. Then faintly, a vibration hums through your skin. It's not steady, it's rhythmic. You think it's your imagination until one of the hunters whispers, "There," moving east. You follow his gaze and catch it, a blur, sleek and deliberate, passing under the surface like a living shadow. The experience feels almost supernatural. You're peering into a mirror of another world, separated only by inches of frozen air. You realize that the hunters know this layer, the in-between, better than anyone. They live on top of it, listen through it, and trust what lies beneath it. You ask quietly, "How do you know where they'll rise?" The eldest chuckles softly. "They tell us," he says, "if we listen long enough." You smile, thinking he's teasing. But then you see what he means. The ice itself gives hints, small cracks forming near pressure ridges, a cluster of bubbles trapped just below the surface, the faint dullness where a breathing hole is forming. The hunters read these clues as naturally as you read a text message. One of the men, perhaps out of kindness, begins to explain in slow English. "Seal needs air," he says. He swims, 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 then up. Same places, same rhythm. We watch the ice, not the sea. His grin is wide, proud. The ice tells truth. You kneel beside him, watching the faint movements below. The seals appear ghost-like, their bodies moving through ribbons of light refracted from the low sun. They swim upside down, sometimes their bellies brushing the ice. When they exhale, bubbles rise and slide along the underside of the ice sheet, searching for an escape. The hunters follow the bubbles with their eyes, tracing them like constellations. For a moment, you imagine you're one of those seals, gliding through the dark world below, trusting tiny openings for life. It's terrifying and graceful all at once. You start to understand why the Inuit hold such deep respect for them, not just as food, but as teachers. They show how to breathe sparingly, how to move silently, how to survive through rhythm instead of force. The eldest hunter leans over the ice again, pressing his ear directly against it. His hood muffles the sound, but his eyes close in something like reverence. "When I was boy," he murmurs, "my father told me the ice speaks only when it trusts you. The impatient never hear it." You think of how impatient your own world has become. Notifications, deadlines, everything instant. Out here, nothing is instant. A seal might surface once every half hour. The hunters might wait all day for a chance that never comes. Yet their calm never breaks. It's as though waiting is the work. The young hunter laughs suddenly. "Seal fooling us," he says, pointing to a different hole where bubbles have appeared. The group shifts, moving as one, their steps silent and quick. You follow, heart racing, slipping once on the slick surface. They stop at the new hole and crouch again, perfectly still. Moments later, a faint shadow moves beneath, larger this time. It passes right under your reflection, and for an instant, you and the seal share a mirrored glance through ice. Your breath catches. The hunter beside you whispers, "See." He sees you too. It's strangely intimate, that moment, two creatures staring across worlds, both trying to survive the same cold. And as you kneel there, heartbeat loud in your ears, you begin to realize that this isn't just a hunt. It's communion. The silence after that encounter lingers long after the seal's shadow disappears. You walk back toward sleds, your legs heavy from crouching, your breath a steady rhythm in the cold. The hunters say the ice listens, and now you're beginning to believe it. Every crunch, every breath feels like part of a living pulse that stretches for miles in every direction. You glance toward the horizon where the dogs wait, tails curled, tight eyes glittering with patience that almost looks human. When the hunters reach them, they greet the dogs with soft words, patting their necks, checking their paws. They know before we know, the youngest hunter says, scratching behind one ear. Sometimes they smell the seal before we see the hole. You kneel beside one of the dogs, running your glove over its fur. Its thick coarse dusted with frost. The dog leans into your touch, but never looks at you. It's too busy scanning the horizon, nostrils twitching. You realize that out here, animals aren't pets, they're partners. The dogs are trackers, transporters, and sometimes lifesavers. The hunters begin harnessing the team 8 dogs to a sled, each one eager tails wagging, but controlled. They bark once or twice, not out of excitement, but as if confirming the route among themselves. The eldest clicks his tongue softly, and the dogs leap forward, pulling the sled into motion with a strength that feels impossible for their size. You hop onto the back, gripping the handlebar, as snow sprays behind you like smoke. The world becomes motion, pure, rushing whiteness. The sled glides with a low hiss, the dogs panting in unison. The wind tears across your face, but the cold no longer bites. You're too mesmerized by the rhythm of it all. The hunters lean forward, steering with subtle shifts of body weight, their eyes fixed ahead. Every movement is instinct, the result of generations learning this language of wind, ice, and fur. You shout over the noise. How do they know where to go? The young hunter laughs without looking back. They remember, he calls. Same as us, same wind, same path. You squint into the distance, trying to imagine how anyone could remember directions in this endless sameness. No trees, no landmarks, just white on white horizon blending with sky. But the hunters read the terrain the way sailors read waves. A slight rise in snow means a ridge. A subtle blue in the distance means thinner ice. They trust their senses completely, and the dogs even more. The sled slows near a cluster of ice ridges, jutting up like frozen waves. The eldest gestures for silence again, and the dogs instantly stop barking, sitting obediently in the snow. Not one whine, not one impatient shuffle. You can almost feel them listening. They smell seal fat, the hunter says, crouching. Wind brings it. He lifts a handful of snow, sniffs it, and nods. Close, you watch as one of the dogs begins to dig excitedly, claws scraping ice. The hunters exchange knowing glances. They unhitch the team, letting the dogs rest while they inspect the area. The ice here is darker, denser. You kneel, pressing your glove against it. The texture feels different, less brittle, more elastic. The eldest taps it with his chisel, listening for the pitch. It gives a low, hollow sound. Good, he murmurs. Water close. The younger hunter grins, pulling out his harpoon. Maybe our dinner swims under here. While they work, you notice the dogs again. A few lie down, curling into balls, snouts buried in their tails. Others sit alert, ears twitching with every gust of wind. You wonder how many nights they've spent like this, waiting, listening, surviving. These aren't domesticated pets. They're colleagues. You realize the Inuit word for dog, kimik, doesn't just mean animal. It also means companion. One hunter begins carving a small block of snow into a makeshift bench. You sit beside him, grateful for the brief rest. He hands you a strip of dried meat, the texture leathery, but satisfying. From last hunt, he says. You chew slowly, trying not to let your jaw freeze, and manage a smile. Better than beef jerky, you joke. He grins. Beef never pulls sled. You laugh quietly, but he's right. Every part of their life works in balance. The hunters, the dogs, the seals, even the ice itself. Nothing stands alone. In your world, independence is strength. Here, interdependence is survival. When the group finishes inspecting the ice, they begin preparing for another long wait. The dogs curl up again, half asleep, but always listening. You follow the hunters as they settle near a cluster of small holes, their harpoons ready. The light has dimmed now. The sun is a pale smear across the horizon, and the world glows blue. The wind drops, completely leaving behind a hush so thick it presses on your ears. The hunters barely move. Even the dogs seem frozen in place, eyes half closed, but alert. Time stretches thin like the ice itself. You find yourself thinking about how strange it is that these men trust the silence so completely. Most people would fear it, fill it with chatter or noise. But here silence isn't emptiness, it's a tool. It carries sound, farther, keeps secrets longer, and rewards the patient. You look down at your reflection in the ice. It stares back, faintly distorted by ripples of frozen water beneath. Somewhere below, seals move like ghosts. You realize you're surrounded by lives you'll never see fully, but whose patterns shape everything above. One of the hunters whispers almost to himself. When you live long enough with ice, you start to dream its dreams. You don't know what that means yet, but somehow you understand it. The night in the Arctic doesn't fall. It seeps in. It begins as a dimming at the edges of things, a slow swallowing of color, until even the snow turns gray. The sky stretches low and heavy, and the first ribbons of aurora drift above like someone spilling paint across velvet. The hunters don't look up. They've seen it too many times. You, on the other hand, can't stop staring. The eldest hunter finally chuckles. Pretty, he says, but useless for warmth. His tone is teasing, not unkind. You smile, tearing your gaze away from the lights. The real show is happening below your feet. The hunters have settled into their positions again, each one kneeling beside a chosen breathing hole, their harpoons balanced lightly in their hands. This time, you decide to try it on your own. You pick a hole the youngest hunter had marked earlier and settle beside it. The snow sighs under your weight. The air smells faintly of salt and smoke from the kulik lamp you left burning in the igloo. You exhale and watch the cloud vanish into the blue-black air. The young hunter crouches nearby, adjusting the angle of your harpoon. You hold like this, he murmurs. Don't aim for where he is. Aim for where he will be. His words echo something you've heard athletes and philosophers say, but here it's more literal. The seal's surface is fast and brief. Hesitation means hunger. You take a deep breath and steady your hands. The harpoon feels alive, its balance perfect, its shaft smooth from years of use. You imagine all the hunts it has seen, all the nights it's waited beside these same frozen windows. The Arctic doesn't change, only the hands that hold the tools do. The wind softens, the world shrinks. It's so quiet you can hear your pulse in your ears. Time slows until minutes feel like hours. You remember the lesson, silence isn't stillness, it's focus. You start to notice small things you'd missed before: the faint popping of ice adjusting to temperature, the delicate crunch of frost forming along your mittens, even the quiet breathing of the hunters beside you. Then somewhere nearby, a seal exhales. The sound is impossibly soft, just a faint puff, but it cuts through the stillness like music. You freeze, heart hammering. The young hunter nods once, encouraging you silently. You raise your harpoon, aligning it with the hole. The moment stretches breathless. Then another sound. A second exhale, slightly longer. You move. The harpoon slides forward, guided more by instinct than muscle. The line sings faintly as it unspools, and for a heartbeat, the world feels suspended, caught between darkness and life. The impact is subtle, not cinematic. Just a muted thump followed by tension in the line. The hunter beside you grabs it, crushing it with a practiced motion. You both pull slow and steady. The resistance is heavy, but fading. The seal rises through the dark water, and when its sleek head breaks the surface, it glows faintly in the aurora's light. You expect triumph, but what you feel is awe. You've just pierced a world you can't see, interrupted a rhythm older than language. The young hunter murmurs something you don't understand. Maybe a prayer, maybe a thank you. The others join quietly, a low chant that feels like breathing itself. You lower your eyes, letting the sound wash over you. When it's over, they pull the seal fully onto the ice. Its body steams faintly in the cold air. The hunters work swiftly, their movements reverent and efficient. One gathers the spilled snow into a mound covering the blood before it can freeze solid. Respect the eldest, says simply. He gave life. We return quiet. You help where you can, though, clumsily. Your fingers ache despite the fur mittens, but you keep working. The eldest watches with a small smile. You're learning, he says. The first hunt is never about food. It's about listening. Later, when the work is done, you sit with them around the dim glow of the lamp again. The dogs sleep in a huddle nearby, soft snoring lost in the wind. The aurora still dances outside, its light slipping through the vent at the top of the dome, painting slow waves on the ceiling. The youngest hunter speaks first. You did well, he says, grinning. Next time, maybe you hit the seal, not the water beside him. The others laugh quietly, warmth in their voices. You can't even be embarrassed. You laugh too, realizing you're part of something now. A rhythm, a shared absurdity of survival. The conversation drifts to stories, old hunts, dangerous storms, legendary seals that outsmarted even the best. One man tells of a time he fell through thin ice and was pulled out by his dogs. They barked at me for a week, after he says, shaking his head. Another recalls his grandfather, waiting 3 days for a single seal, refusing to move until he succeeded. He said patience keeps you warm, the man adds, chuckling. He wasn't wrong. You listen wrapped in fur, the stories winding through the space like smoke. It strikes you that these tales aren't just entertainment. They're how wisdom survives. Each joke, each lesson, each pause carries generations of knowledge shaped by ice and hunger and love for this brutal land. The eldest finally looks at you. Now you know, he says. The seal is not just meat. It's our teacher. He taps his chest lightly. He shows us how to wait, how to breathe, how to live where others can't. You nod, too tired to speak. You understand now why these men never boast, why they move with quiet grace. Every breath taken here feels borrowed. Every success is a collaboration with something bigger. Outside, the aurora brightens green, turning to pink to gold. It shimmers across the snow like an echo of everything you've learned, the patience, the rhythm, the reverence. You close your eyes, listening to the crackle of ice beneath you and the soft breathing of the men beside you. For the first time, you don't hear silence. You hear balance. By morning, the aurora has faded, leaving behind a blue half-light that makes the world look half frozen, half dreaming. The hunters rise quietly, their faces calm, movements unhurried. You stretch bones stiff from sleeping on fur and feel the slow return of sensation in your fingers. You've started to notice something strange. The cold doesn't bite anymore, it hums. You've become part of its rhythm, and somehow that feels like peace. The dogs stir, first shaking frost from their coats, their tails curling into tight commas. One yawns wide enough to show pink gums, then nudges the youngest hunter's shoulder with its snout. He laughs softly. They know, he says. They smell the sea. The eldest nods and gestures toward the horizon, where the ice glitters brighter, smoother the edge of the flow, where open water sometimes breathes beneath cracks. That's where the hunters are heading next. The sleds are packed quickly, bundles of seal meat harpoons and rolled hides tied down with strips of sinew. The dogs whine eagerly, sensing the change in air. When the sleds take off, the sound is pure energy. Metal runners, hissing paws, pounding wind rising to meet you. The speed steals your breath. The Arctic stretches endless and silent. But beneath the noise of the sled, you can feel the deep thrum of the sea like a heart under ice. You hold on to the back rail, the cold slapping your cheeks, but your grin is unstoppable. You've stopped being a visitor. You're part of the motion now. After an hour, the sled slows near a jagged expanse where pressure ridges jut up like frozen teeth. The dogs halt, panting steam. Hunters unclip them and let them rest while they begin to test the ice. It's thinner here, you can tell by the deep, hollow sound it makes when they strike it. The eldest kneels and points to a small hole already forming near a ridge. Tide pushes up, he says. Seal uses these places to come fast, easy breath but dangerous ground. He steps carefully, weight low, tapping the ice ahead with his chisel. Every step has purpose. One mistake could send him through. You try to copy his gait, sliding 1 foot ahead of the other, feeling the surface tremble faintly beneath your soles. Beneath that thin layer lies black water so cold, it burns before it freezes. The youngest crouches near another hole, watching the patterns forming in the frost. See, he whispers. This one knew. You follow his gaze. At first you see only ice, but then the light catches a faint ring of moisture still glistening. A recent exhale from below. Your pulse quickens. The hunters spread out again, harpoons ready. This time the strategy is different. Seals here rise fast, unpredictably, so the hunters rely more on reflex than patience. They crouch low, hands hovering above the water's edge. The world narrows to a circle no wider than your arm span. You can hear it now, the soft creaking of ice, flexing, the whisper of air moving under pressure, the slow bubbling from below. Then suddenly a dark head surfaces. The youngest hunter moves so fast you almost miss it, one fluid motion, the harpoon slicing down the rope, snapping tight. The ice shudders, water splashes up in a glittering arc, and then silence again. He exhales once quietly and begins pulling the line. When the seal is drawn up, the men nod respectfully. No celebration, no words. The youngest hunter wipes frost from his brow and murmurs something in Inuktitut, that sounds like gratitude. You realize this is the pattern: patience, precision, reverence. Each hunt is not conquest, it's conversation. While they work, you glance at the sky. The light has shifted again, turning the air gold around the edges. The horizon glows with a subtle warmth that feels out of place here, like a reminder of another world. You wonder if people living under city lights will ever understand how alive emptiness can be. The hunters finish cleaning the catch, covering the hole with snow again to keep balance with the ice spirits. You help load the sled, your gloves slick with frost and oil. The eldest pats your shoulder. "You listen good now," he says. "The ice likes quiet people." You grin, though part of you suspects he's only half joking. Back at camp, they build a small cooking fire using the kulik and seal oil. The smell of sizzling fat fills the air, rich, earthy, unmistakable. One of the hunters hands you a strip of meat, still steaming. You bite carefully, and the taste surprises you: warm, savory, full of life. It's not the food itself that feels nourishing. It's the fact that it was earned patiently through silence and respect. As you eat, you notice how everyone sits close, shoulders touching, sharing warmth. There's no conversation at first, only the soft crackle of oil and the wind brushing the snow. Then someone starts humming a low tune. It's not quite a song, more like a vibration that matches the pulse of the lamp flame. The others join in one by one, until the air hums with quiet harmony. You close your eyes, feeling the sound travel through you. The hum of their voices, the breathing of the dogs, the sigh of the wind, it all blends into one living rhythm. This is what survival sounds like, unity made audible. When the meal ends, the hunters rise to prepare for travel again. You help pack your fingers, moving automatically, guided by the muscle memory you've begun to build. Before they leave, the eldest looks out over the ice and says softly, "Everything moves. Seal ice us. The trick is to move like you belong." As the sleds pull away again, the aurora begins to return faintly in the distance. You turn once to look back at the spot where the seal was taken. The snow already covers it completely. No trace remains. You think of his words, "everything moves." You realize he meant everything fades too, but not in sadness, in rhythm. And for the first time, that idea feels comforting. The sled cuts through the afternoon light, gliding like a thought you don't want to end. You're surrounded by motion, but wrapped in silence, the kind that doesn't ask for anything. The dogs run steady, their rhythm, hypnotic tongues lolling paws, pressing small miracles into the snow. You realize that in the Arctic movement is prayer. Each step, each breath, a whispered negotiation with the cold. The hunters steer toward a ridge that slopes gently down to a broad sheet of ice the color of old glass. Here they will rest. The air is still the sky, a pale wash of blue, so faint it feels borrowed. The eldest signals for the dogs to stop. They obey immediately, collapsing into the snow with sighs that sound almost human. The hunters unload the sleds with practiced precision. Tools meet bundles of fur, all arranged in a neat semicircle. The youngest crouches to clear a patch of ice, scraping it clean with his blade, until it gleams. Then he pulls out a pouch and scatters something over the surface. You lean closer. It's tiny shards of bone carved smooth and polished by years of use. He arranges them carefully, whispering a few words under his breath. "What's that?" you ask softly. Thanking, he replies simply, "We give back what feeds us." The ritual lasts only a minute, but it feels like an eternity stretched thin by reverence. When he finishes, he gathers snow over the spot and pats it flat. The act is small, but the quiet that follows feels sacred. No ceremony, no grand gesture, just humility shaped by routine. While the others prepare camp, you wander a few steps away, drawn by a low cracking sound in the distance. You pause, holding your breath. The noise comes again, deeper this time, like thunder trapped underground. You realize it's the ice shifting, an invisible tectonic sigh as the sea beneath moves restlessly. The sound is both terrifying and beautiful, reminding you how alive the frozen world really is. One of the hunters joins you, standing beside you in silence. "She breathes," he says at last. "When she's quiet too long, we worry." He grins faintly as if comforting you, but his eyes stay fixed on the horizon. The ice has moods. Today, she's kind. You nod, though your throat feels tight. You're starting to see how survival here depends not on strength, but on relationship. Every choice, the place you step, the hole you wait beside the seal you take, exists inside a delicate conversation between human and world. The hunters begin slicing pieces of seal meat into thin strips, laying them on racks made from driftwood and bone. The smell is rich and heavy, a mix of salt and smoke. You help where you can, rubbing your gloved hands together for warmth. The youngest laughs at your fumbling knife work. "You cut like Southerner," he teases. "Seal will laugh at you." You grin back. "Then I hope he's got a good sense of humor." The eldest chuckles. He does. He forgives slow learners. The dogs rest nearby, their eyes half-closed, ears twitching. One of the older males raises his head, suddenly sniffing the air. The hunters stop what they're doing instantly. The youngest lowers his voice. "Polar bear," he whispers. The word makes your stomach tighten. No one panics. The hunters move like liquid quiet, coordinated. The eldest stands scanning the horizon. After a moment, he relaxes. "Far away," he says. He smells the seal, but the wind favors us. The group resumes their work as if nothing happened. You, however, find yourself checking the edges of the ice every few seconds. The hunter beside you catches your expression and smirks. He won't come close. Too smart. Like us, he waits for mistakes. The humor breaks your tension, and you laugh softly. Even danger here seems philosophical. Everything teaches a lesson, even predators. As evening drifts closer, the hunters gather around the kulik lamp once more. The flame burns low and steady, like gold, against the blue twilight. They pass around a small pot of broth, seal meat, seaweed, melted snow. The first sip warms your throat, spreading slow fire through your chest. You hadn't realized how hungry you were. After eating, the eldest begins to hum, and soon the others join in. The melody is simple, circular, like the rhythm of paddles hitting water. You don't know the words, but you can feel their weight. The song is about balance between the hunter and the hunted, between the living and the frozen. You close your eyes, letting the sound wash over you. When the song ends, the youngest hunter breaks the silence with a grin. "Tomorrow," he says, "you try to find the hole first." You laugh softly, pretending confidence. "I'll probably fall into it instead." "Then you'll learn faster," the eldest adds dryly. Everyone chuckles, the kind of laughter that carries warmth through exhaustion. Later, as the group drifts toward sleep, you step outside for one last look at the sky. The aurora has returned thinner tonight, like green smoke rising from invisible fires. The wind has died completely, leaving the air so clear it feels like glass. You look down at the ice and see your reflection surrounded by stars. For the first time, you feel no separation between the two. The sky above and the world below are mirrors of the same stillness. Behind you, one of the dogs stirs and yawns, curling back into sleep. You take a deep breath, the cold air searing and perfect, and realize you're not just surviving the Arctic anymore. You're beginning to understand it. Every sound, every shadow, every breath feels like part of a vast conversation you were once too loud to hear. And as you step back toward the flickering light of the igloo, the last thing you hear before sleep is the ice breathing alive and ancient. You came to the Arctic to learn how humans track seals, but somewhere along the way, you learned how humans remember who they are. The morning after the storm, the sky is the softest blue you've ever seen, like a bruise healing. The wind has fallen silent, and the air hangs still thick with the clean metallic scent of ice. You step outside the igloo, and for the first time it doesn't feel like stepping into danger. It feels like stepping into understanding. The hunters are already up there, figures small and sure against the horizon. The dogs stretch lazily, shaking frost from their fur. The sled glints in the sunlight. The eldest turns when he hears you raising a hand in quiet greeting. "Good morning," he says. His voice sounds lighter somehow, as though the land itself is resting today. You help pack camp, working more confidently now, rolling hides, tying bundles, securing the harpoons. The rhythm of their movements has become familiar, almost meditative. No one rushes. Everything is done with calm purpose. You start to see that this isn't just efficiency, it's reverence disguised as routine. As you walk toward the sleds, your boots crunch through snow that sparkles like crushed glass. You pause, looking out across the frozen expanse. Somewhere beneath this surface, seals are moving, breathing, living their quiet lives. The thought no longer feels distant or alien. It feels like connection. The eldest hunter joins you, following your gaze. "You listen better now," he says softly. You nod. "I think I do." He chuckles. "Good. The ice talks more than people think. But only when you stop talking back." The sled moves out across the plain, the dogs trotting easily, their breath forming white ribbons in the air. You watch the horizon glide toward you, the world endlessly remade in front of your eyes. The motion feels almost spiritual, endless forward, endless learning. After a while, the youngest hunter points to something ahead. You squint and see a faint dark shape, another breathing hole. The others move into position automatically, but this time they motion for you to take the lead. The harpoon feels heavy in your hand, but your heart feels steady. You approach the hole, kneel beside it, and brush away the frost exactly as you've seen them do. You wait. At first, all you hear is your pulse, then the faintest sound, a gurgle, a shift, the whisper of air rising through black water. You lean forward, every muscle quiet. The hole trembles slightly. For a brief second, a shape flickers below the smooth back of a seal, brushing against the surface. It's gone before you even move, but you're not disappointed. You smile instead. You heard it. You felt it. You were part of the moment. When you look up, the eldest is watching. He nods a small, approving gesture. "Now you know," he says. "To track you must listen not to the seal, but to yourself." The group stays for a while, marking the spot, recording the patterns of cracks and frost. The sun climbs higher, washing the snow with soft light that seems to breathe. You find yourself thinking that maybe every civilization begins this way, not with tools, but with listening. Later, as the sled turns homeward, you glance back at the ice field. Already the wind is erasing your tracks, brushing over the snow until the surface is smooth again. No evidence remains that you were ever here. And yet something inside you insists that the land remembers. It always does. The Inuit say the ice is alive, that it listens, learns, forgives. You believe them now. The youngest hunter begins to hum low and steady. The tune drifts through the air like smoke merging with the wind. You recognize it from the night before, a sing about breath and waiting, about the circle of life between the seal and the hunter. You join in quietly, not with words but with breath, letting the rhythm settle in your chest. The sled glides toward the horizon, and the dogs run strong and steady, their paws whispering over the snow. The cold no longer feels cruel. It feels honest. The world no longer feels empty. It feels vast. You think back to your first day here when the silence frightened you. Now it comforts you. You understand that every whisper of wind, every vibration of ice, every slow, invisible breath below the surface is part of the same story, the story of endurance, written by hands older than time. As the camp fades behind you, you look up one last time. The sky is blazing with daylight now. No aurora, no drama. Just light reflected endlessly over snow and sea. You exhale and your breath disappears into the air, joining millions before it. For a brief moment you wonder if some seal far below might feel it as warmth against its skin. The eldest glances back at you, his eyes kind. "The ice taught you," he says. You nod, smiling. "Yes," you whisper. "It did." He grins. "Then you can go anywhere now. Just remember, the world speaks softly. You must listen loudly."